name is Rich Rogers. I'm one of the board members here at Camps. I've been part of Camps now, actually going 7 or 8 years. So it's been a pretty amazing ride just being a part of the Camps community. Yeah, today I would just say this AI working shop group or working group has been pretty amazing. I know last month we had Amazon or AWS speaking, and today we're super excited to have Simon Floyd from Microsoft join us for this hour. So yeah, Simon is the GM of manufacturing and mobility at Microsoft. Prior to that, he worked at Google and he was the director of global manufacturing industries there at Google. So yeah, he just has a tremendous amount of insight like into the space in terms of the technology, how it's being applied in different industrial use cases. And yeah, definitely super excited to learn from him today and to hear what's going on out there. So thank you, Simon.
Yeah, thanks very much, Rich, and I really appreciate the opportunity as always. For those of you who have met me before, you know I always like to rain a lot of loves on camps. It's like one of my favorite groups to be involved in, and partly because we have the opportunity to do this type of thing, though, so always really enjoyable for me. I hope that today will be a valuable use of your time. Obviously, I'm going to mix for you some of the sort of strategy part of what's going on with AI within the enterprise and for manufacturers. We're going to have our fingers crossed that I can do some live demonstrations for you because you never really know how they go. I always say, never let a machine know you're in a hurry, whether that's like a physical machine or an AI machine, never let them know you're in a hurry. And that'll be the case today. And I've got plenty of content to go through to show you a few things that you can do with AI today, which actually I believe or would hope would be very useful for manufacturers of all size. Today, what I thought I'd do is try to get as much of this through as we possibly can. And if we miss anything, we can always come back at another stage. It's no problem. But I prefer to have a lot of options here that we can go through. And so I'll kick off, just talk about industry insights of the work that Microsoft has been doing in the industry and some of the bigger, if you like, trends that we've noticed, which we'll be sharing with you. We'll talk about the difference between copilots and agents and why that's important. Then I'm going to show you how to build one, and we'll see how that goes, which should be fun. We'll do that in real time. And then I'll show you a couple of options like Copilot in Excel. And I think for many people, especially in the small to medium sized category, you probably use Excel really heavily. Actually, in really big enterprises, they use it too. So we'll show you how to kind of take advantage of it. So I think that'll be actually a pretty interesting kind of live demonstration again for you. And then I'm going to walk you through Cowork and Researcher. I won't run those live because they run for 6-7 minutes at a time, and we'll kind of cut all of the processing time out and cut to the chase. I bet you we run out of time to do the factory orchestrator, but this one is our fully fledged what it looks like when we deploy it at enterprise scale. So we may run out of time for that one, but we could always come back again at another stage. All right, super. So let's just kick off. So my team serves all the Americas region. So we cover Canada, the United States, and Latin America. And then quite recently, we ran a study just over a 6-month period, actually. We just went to everybody and we just analyzed where are they working? So what are they doing? What are they doing with Microsoft, to be clear? It wasn't just what are they doing generally in AI, but what are they doing with Microsoft? And we broke it into two groups. One was where they identified a higher level category or function in the business where they're operating. So that first one you see there, like factories, plants, and operations. They said, here's where we're working and we're focused. And then others said the ones that are represented more in the pink color, which is where we are focused on very specific AI use cases with you. So we went through and we ran that survey and we got a count of like how many cases there were and then what the total investment looks like. And that is, if you like, an investment in Microsoft in the space, effectively acquiring our technology to solve this space. What you see here is actually quite interesting because it's got obviously a very heavy concentration in the engineering space, also operations space, but the next biggest category is actually customer experience. And analyzing why it goes into these three spaces, we broke it down this way. Digital engineering, it just seemed like it was very document heavy. It's got a lot of process, often many things which ad hoc, a lot of collaboration. Everybody we've talked to so far has immediately been able to identify probably a dozen things that they could do to get better automation, better execution. It's almost like they're saying, we tried to implement something like StageGate to get process orchestration and sign off and everything, but we've failed at it when it's work in progress. And then that part, we would like to still have a lot of orchestration, but we don't want anything heavy. We don't want such formality. And so they've said where we can orchestrate tasks between people and where we can automate the creation of things, that's where we would go, because the front end of the innovation cycle is really critical for us. That's where we're going to make up a lot of time. So this is really, for many organizations, has been an investment in time acceleration or time compression, depending on if you're glass half full or half empty type of person, how you want to look at it. But the kind of comment there was lots of time sunk here and very difficult to compress it just with adding more people. We need to transform the process. And so we're going to apply an AI method here. Second to that, operations, and really no surprise for all of you, I'm sure that this would be a target area, but in particular, two things that we found. One is that most of it related to supply chain tactics. There's a lot of risk mitigation in here. As an example, there was a lot of trying to understand relative inventory across global locations or local warehouses and so on, orchestration of those, how many parts that we have to complete a build order, things that you would expect would already be in a system, but perhaps it just wasn't fully available to everyone that's in a decision-making process, and or that decision-making process is complicated. And so therefore they've been targeting these particular cases. And then others were just more to do with things like reconciliation. Does what we ordered match what we were billed for? Does that match what we have in inventory? Does that match what we actually used? What did the delta look like? Those not particularly exciting cases, but obviously really big pain points for people. And then the kind of like the next biggest workload to that is actually just pure knowledge management. And that was onboarding of new skill sets to people, onboarding new people into factory operations, trying to do workforce mitigation. What happens when there's like a bunch of people get sick on the weekend, and that's going to be a liability for my production? How do I bring in other people that are at work but maybe don't have those skills? AI plays a really important role there. It's like helping people understand how to do the work and do that according to standards and practices and so on. The final thing I'll say here is the one that should be no surprise really is customer experience, because it hits the revenue side of the house. And so for all the talk of, is there any ROI in particular for AI? Many organizations actually know this right from the start. They'll say, if I can get better customer acquisition because I can target things to them in a better way, then I'll invest. So no surprise that we see that one come up quite frequently across all the different companies we work with. Okay, now let's just talk about approaches for that. So behind all of the work that we've been doing, there is like a mix of approaches from Microsoft to do this. One that you're probably very familiar with, because it's more, if you like, as consumer experience, as an enterprise experience. It's like a little bit of a noun in the world is to say Copilot, and you're not thinking just in an aircraft anymore, you're thinking kind of an AI, which is like a nice little association of words there. But the Copilots are there, your personal assistant, they're there to help you. So as you're working through your day on the things that are important for you, the Copilots are the answer to that. And you'll see them across almost every product that we have, and all of them are tuned to what that product does. So your Copilot in Excel, it knows Excel intrinsically, but it also knows your enterprise. So when you're working, Copilot is aware of all the things that you do, which includes like your Teams chat, your SharePoint, all of your enterprise resources, as an example. It understands all of the context so that you're not just working in isolation. And then what we're going to look at today is an agent. These agents can either be connected to a Copilot or they can be completely autonomous. The autonomous area is absolutely incredible because they have the ability to analyze real-time data and then take action. So they're not what you would have done in the past is like fixed workflow that maybe had set of rigid rules. These are very dynamic. They work much like a person does. When a person's interpreting the real-time data, they take actions. That's what agents will do for you as well. And generally, the message from us has really been that these are the types of capabilities that all businesses will have in the future without question. If you go back to the original vision for Microsoft, which was a PC on every desktop, today we would say there is going to be an agent, many agents in every business. This will be the new way of orchestrating work and gaining efficiency and productivity in the enterprise. So with that, we need to break this down a little bit, which is where can you go with this depending on your skills and what your outcomes are, what you're looking to actually get done in your enterprise. So break it down into these three high-level categories for you. One is you have your copilots, but you also have something called Agent Builder. I'm going to show you that today. It's just there for productivity. I say it's just there for productivity. It's incredible what it can do, but it doesn't hold a candle to something like Copilot Studio, which is going to be more on the process side. So it does everything that your agent builder will, but you can add in there the orchestration of many agents, and you can also add in there intelligent workflows, and then you can really start to orchestrate across applications, across different clouds, even if you want to, across different AIs. You can do all of this orchestration simply with Copilot Studio. And then if you're developing or building something which is going to be really complex, especially in autonomous operations, then AI Foundry is the right direction to go. So this gives you the gamut of what's available from Microsoft to build different experiences in your organization. Okay, so let's talk about an agent in particular, because the copilots are built for you. Using those, as generally, I think most people know how to use those intuitively. But an agent, you only need to know really three things about an agent. One is instructions. You have to tell it what to do. And a really good way to think about this, a good analogy is if you had an intern coming to work for you and they know something about manufacturing, but they don't know your operations in particular or what you want, you would be quite verbose. You would say, please go do the following actions, and this is the kind of outcome that I'm looking for. Every now and then I like to tell stories. It does remind me of when my first manufacturing job, and of course the foreman asked me to go out and buy a can of checker paint. We all do this, don't we? Or buy a can of bananas, the impossible task. Always that. I like to remember that back then, in the good old days, there was a lot of this sort of upfront shenanigans that would occur. And at the end of the day, those who survive are the ones that immediately know you cannot buy checker paint. It's impossible. You cannot do that. And that was like a very good answer. Today, you would give instructions to an agent. You would not ask for checker paint, but if you did, it would come back and tell you that is impossible. So it's very analogous. What you would tell a person, you would want to tell them something which is very actionable and is going to be based in fact and is going to be very truthful. If you deviate from that, they are smart enough to work out that what you have asked for is actually an impossible task. You might want to do that for fun, but you would never do it in practice. And the real point of this at the end of the day is that we do tell the agents not to try and create an answer if there is no answer to be found. And so we can tell them that. Don't try and find something if you don't know, just say that you don't know. And so that is instructions. Of course, you have to give it knowledge, and that can be anywhere, really. It can be a file system, it can be SharePoint, it can be like an enterprise system, as an example, it can be almost anywhere. So you just say, what kind of knowledge are you looking for? Of course, the internet, if that's a place you need to go, like a website, company website, product catalog, or something of that nature. And then we have actions like, what are we going to do? And some of those actions could be driven on a sort of like a particular outcome, and then it could be create a calendar event for me and invite these people, or it could be send an email to me, or it could be orchestrate this in my ERP system. You can have a number of different actions that you can take. It doesn't have to just be returning knowledge to you. It can actually be practical things that it will do. Okay, how do you choose? It's really easy actually to choose. I'll simplify it. We have a little process diagram here or flow chart. Agent Builder, you do that for yourself. You don't need to know code. In fact, in the future, there will be limited amount of code, I think, in general. If you know it will be helpful for the very advanced cases, but for everybody else, if you can describe it, you can build it. And so that's really Agent Builder. And that's something that everybody in the company can have. We call it citizen development, but you might just say, I'm going to AI enable everybody in my company so that they can create the things that help them in their job, but then they can create things that can help others in the job too. You can share your agents. And then Copilot Studio is the one where perhaps more about a particular process or orchestration in the organization, and you're trying to transform how it works, then Copilot Studio is the right answer. Again, no code, but if you do know, you can get down to more details and do more things on your own. So Copilot Studio is for that. I'm going to show you a little bit of both today, but we'll focus mostly on the Agent Builder because that's the one that's very consumable. Okay, this is designed to be a 30-minute workshop. I'm going to make it faster than that for you. We're going to build a bill of materials intelligent agent. We're going to build one on the fly. And let's kick off. This is what my source material looks like. I'm sure you've seen this type of thing before. And by the way, I broke a few rules, which we'll talk about, but that's real life. So I'm going to show you what happens when you don't do everything perfectly. You still get to an answer, which is good. This is a real bill of materials from a product that we retired some years ago. And so all of this is no longer secret embargoed, but lots of electronics in there, as you can well imagine. And this was a direct output that came from one of our line of business systems, actually came from our PLM system. And so we just created I asked for a favor, said I want something that's going to be super real today for people. They gave me this. And of course, they gave me 15,000 lines of it. They didn't just give me a nice one with 300 for a demo. They're like, here, have fun. And I'm like, oh, holy cow, it's got 15,000 rows in it. And it's probably got 30 odd columns. But that's real life, isn't it? And we're going to see what it's like to have a couple of experiences. So one, we're going to build an agent for this, so that's dedicated to this data set. And then we're going to deal with the data set directly. All right, so underneath this bill of materials, what do we have? So we've got around about, as I said, around about 15,000 rows, 157 unique vendors, which is pretty incredible. And the bill of materials goes 7 layers deep. And there's a couple of common things that you would find here. Your data is often skewed all over the place. You would love to have everything in ERP if you can, or you'd love to have everything in MES if you can, but you probably bought different systems at some stage, and it's very common. And so then what happens is you go to a spreadsheet trying to reconcile between the two or come up with an answer between the two. Sometimes you're just running it in Excel because it's right there and it's pretty cost effective. And so therefore you use it. And at the end of the day, it just takes a lot of time to go through that. A spreadsheet that big, maybe you built smarts into it so that you can pivot table and do things like that. But not everybody can do pivot tables either. And you don't always have the one that you're looking for. Do you want to spend a lot of time doing that, or would you prefer just to get answers? And so really what we're trying to do here is just get answers. So we talked about this, but the one thing that I wanted to add is that the agents are really good with conversation. And like the more that you converse with it, obviously the more it does, but also the more that it learns, and they do speed up. So if you're asking very common things, they remember that. They're not doing actually as much thinking to get there, which is good. So when you start out, you might say, oh, that took a good 30 seconds to come up with an answer. That was too long. Probably would take 5 hours for a person, but still you're impatient because we all are in this world. So why did it take 30 seconds? The next time round, it might only take 15 seconds. The more that you use these agents, the quicker they are at understanding and traversing their way through the data to give you an answer. The bill of materials, when we break it down, this is what it looks like. We're going to work our way through the data with the agent and see what it can actually produce for us. So kind of keep this in mind, that these are the sort of high level factors of what we're looking at. And this is what we hope to ask at the end of the day. So we'll look for things like substitutes. We're going to ask that question, but we could also ask for rather complex things and see what we get. So I'm going to stop sharing this deck and I'm going to jump over to the real environment and we're going to take a look. Okay, so let me get my mind around Zoom. Here we go. And sharing. Perfect. So hopefully everybody can see my my Microsoft 365 Copilot screen. I'm just in a browser. We also have a desktop app for this, and an app for your phone, for your iPhone or for Android. So you can get this wherever you work on whichever platform you have. And you can kind of see that actually I've got a couple of experiences. One, I've got just like a chat session, which we can see here. And so it's asking me in my role, would you like me to recap or help you prepare for your meetings? And it worked that out on its own for me in my role function. I have another function here, which is purely, I'm looking for something. And it kind of says, are you looking from these people? You apparently work with these people a lot. And here's some kind of sources, would you like me to help you find something? And then over here, we've got all the different agents which are available to me. These are all things which either I have built or the organization has built or my colleagues have built, and they're available for me. So I've actually built one of these agents to get started. And so I'm going to show you what it looks like. I'm just going to edit it. So I made a BOM intelligence agent in advance. Let's open it up and take a look. And see what we did, and then I can step you through what it will take for you to do that too. While I'm waiting for that to come up on screen, I'm going to show you something else just as a quick preview. This is the Copilot Studio, so slightly different experience right off the bat, as you can see. So over here, it's a very sort of simplified environment. And then this one over here, it's got a little bit more to it. So it's asking you different questions. You're building an agent or building a workflow today. So both experiences you get directly in the browser. Both of them perform different functions for what you want to do in your organization. So here it is, my BOM intelligence agent. And how did I go about this? One is you give it a name. So obviously something that is going to resonate. And then you tell it what it's all about. So this one is a parts and supplier analyst agent, but I've made it for engineers and sourcing professionals. Now, why would I say that? Because I want the agent to understand a little bit more about who this is targeted for. And it's smart enough to work out, you said the word engineer and you said the word sourcing. And so I'm going to act that way. You described me that way, I'm going to act that way. And then I gave it instructions. So I said, look, this is what you are. You're for manufacturing teams. You help engineers and supply chain managers. Yeah. I want you to look in this bill of materials and approved manufacturer list. And I've said your role will be an analyst in an engineering function. So it's very specific, actually. You can be in manufacturing, but manufacturing engineering function. And then I've given it some rules. And this goes back to my, you can't buy checkered paint. Never guess. If the data is not in the BOM, say so. This really answers that question for people that say, oh, I've read in the media that these things, they get derailed easy and they start inventing things out of thin air. That's actually just them seeking for an answer that they don't have. So just tell it, don't do that. And then they don't. This is the way that you make it precise. This gives you full precision and control. It's your data. So it's only going to know your data. It's not going to try and look outside of that boundary, which is important. And importantly, if it doesn't know the answer, like you would want an intern to do, you don't want them to invent something so that they don't get in trouble. You just want them to be honest and say, I'm sorry, I couldn't work it out. And so guess what? Our agent's going to do that for us too. Now, when it does that, just come back here and refine the rules. Didn't get quite what you wanted, continuous improvement, just keep updating the rules. I want it to reference, in particular, my part number. So I have one internal for my organization. I want it to explain to me that it's got strategic commodity and consigned parts, and so on. So I'm being quite verbose about how that works. Next, I'm going to give it knowledge. And actually this time round, I said, look, what I want you to do is have like a reference to the organization chart, because there's assignments inside the bill of materials, which are people in my company. And so I might want to identify who those people in the company are if I'm going to work with them, or if I have something I want them to do, workflow or something of that nature. And for fun, I just gave it this big monster bill of materials. Frankly, would you do that in practice? Maybe to try your first agent, but probably you would just redirect it to whatever source system that comes from. You would send it to your MES or your ERP or something like that. You would do that. But I wanted to see what it would be like if I just did that data directly, because sometimes you just need that. I gave it some capabilities. So I said, if you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, then you can do Word or Excel, PowerPoint. Help me create those. Maybe I'm going to ask a question. In the end, I'll say, make a presentation for me, because I want to go present that to management, or I want to share it with people so they don't have to look at that big Excel. I just want you to give me something consumable. And then I gave it some prompts, some things I thought people would commonly ask of this agent. Strategic parts, please list them. Unique vendors, find them, please, for this particular product. And a really nice one here about risk. So when you've finished putting this all together, you can preview your BOM intelligence agent. And I'm going to ask it a question, actually. I'm going to come over here and just do a bit of cut and paste so I don't have to type. So I've got some that I can just go with, but down here I'm going to hit one. Which parts of approved substitutes available? Okay, let's find out. Now, this is an interesting question, because we could go back to the Excel and we could try filter it, sort it, find out what it is, come up with the right answer. But then imagine how many times you would have to share this Excel with people to do that. Imagine if people actually just don't quite don't search for it the same way that you do and get the answer that you were expecting, or the answer they get is no longer standard. Now it's standard because you've just made it one thing for the organization. So you made this for yourself. It works for you. It's giving very good answers. Now share it. You can share it with everybody else so they can use it. You have control, so you can update it as you wish. Some people will use this and want to update it on their own. We allow that too. And we have governance for that. So if you don't want to allow it, you can control it. You can also control how many people share these things too, because sometimes in organizations, they really jump into this and they begin creating thousands of agents. I guarantee you a lot of those are the same because we do a lot of the same work. We can put a governance method into there that allows you to work out what to publish. It's doing a really nice job. As we can see here, it's finding its way through the bill of materials. It's telling us a lot of information here about what would be an approved substitute. It looks like we did a good job of having maybe 3 or maybe 4 suppliers. So we're all about risk management over here. Got to build a product, but make sure no one is going to get in the way of that. But notice how it's giving some kind of interesting insights here too. It says this one here, fully multi-source decoupling. That's pretty interesting. Resistors broadly, yeah. And continuity, multi-vendor, commodity. It's giving you additional insights, but I don't remember asking for that. Actually, all I asked for at the end of the day was which parts have approved substitutes available. That was it. That's all I asked for. And it's going through and trying to work out for my role what I need to know based on that. I was a little vague, but it's working out on its own things that I would need to know. And it's doing it based on the data. Now, this is only in preview mode. When we look at it operating by itself, which I'll show you, it's actually a little bit different. And maybe we're going to do that actually, is I'm just going to jump out of here. I'm going to go back, I'll pick it, and then I'm going to kind of ask it the same question and let it go. So now it's a little bit different than you saw before, because now we're working enterprise grade. We're out of the little preview environment and we're now going into the full. And it says, no, it said here that the upload failed on the actual document, which sometimes this happens when you're running in an environment like mine, in a test environment. So I'm going to show you, I predicted that this might happen at the end of the day. So I'll just give it one more shot to see if it just remembers where this is. And then if not, I'll show you the results of one that I just built previously. So we run all test environments in our company. We don't get the luxury of ones which are nice that go to the customers. We have to go through these ones, which is always really fun. But I don't mind. I'm sure you don't mind. So we'll see what happens on our second time around. So at the moment, it looks like it's going to try and line things up, which means it's probably now found that data. So I did find the data. Now I'm going to go back and we'll see what the answer is it comes up with. This is already like an interesting answer. It's already starting to say, well, actually, I might code this. And that's a little bit of the difference you saw there between in the preview environment, it went for a quick answer. Now it's saying, oh, I'm actually going to code it. I'm going to create a little bit of code on the fly so that I can interpret and understand the data better, which is crazy all unto itself. So I'm going to let this guy run because now it's generating some code to come up with the answer and probably going to build a couple of tables and everything else like that. And instead, I'm going to show you what it would be like if we were to come over here. And I've started building one just to kind of get started in Copilot Studio. Now, just jumping ahead, I know that was a really big context switch for you, but I said I was going to build an advanced agent, but I actually gave it the same instructions. The big difference here is I said I could pick the model. So if I didn't really like the results that I was getting from one model, I can get it from another model. Now, why is that important? Because there's so many models being built, AI models being built in the world at the moment, that you just may not really want to bet the farm on one, because they may be better at one thing than the other based on the type of company that they are. So at Microsoft, we actually have pretty much every single model available, including our own. You can see me, I've got these preview ones that are not quite available yet. We're still testing. Hence what you saw before is in test mode, we get a few glitches here and there. We make sure they don't go to you. So I've got all of these set here. But I'm going to build it and I'm going to choose to use Claude. I might actually want to use Opus because it said perform deep reasoning and structured problem solving, which is more what I would want. So I can choose that. Now, the other thing that's interesting is I can tell it I need to have intelligence from my own organization. That's important too. I'm going to take it up a level. Before I just put it in the bill of materials, as you saw, but maybe what I would do is I would connect it actually to the rest of my organization. That's important to me. And then I could also give it more knowledge. And I've got lots of knowledge. It's telling me there's some here which you've already got, like a ServiceNow I can use, or SharePoint, or public websites. But I could also just build a connector or use a connector that comes from a vendor. So if someone's creating like MES system, they may just have a connector already pre-built. I use the connector and then I've got my extra knowledge I'm looking for. I've given it the bill of materials for fun. And here I can just connect it with any extra agents that I have. And this is really very fun because you can make the agents very specific. Like, you do this, that's your job, no more. I don't want you doing 20 things. I just want you doing one thing and doing that really well, which actually is a really good recommended approach anyway at the end of the day. Is don't try to make these things just have one agent that does everything. They actually work a lot like people. Sometimes people are really good at one particular thing that they do and you know them for that. Do the same thing with your agent. Then they can improve. You can just do process improvement for them. So here I could say, look, if I've got an eligible agent, like my website Q&A one is not eligible. So it says no to that, but I can just pick the ones that I want and add from there. What I'm going to do from here is, I'll just continue without saving, is just quickly just show you a little bit more of the advanced side of it. This is if you wanted to build a workflow, it's in the same kind of environment. Or if you are going to add any other tools, you can create your tools that are here as well. So this environment is quite different from what you saw here. So this one is this particular environment it's a lot simpler of an environment. So I've got one here that says, tell me everything that there is to know about products that exist from Microsoft. I went and built one that does that for me. So it's going to go off and find things on the public website and then start giving me answers. So you can see the kind of the difference between the two. This one here is executing against something like a public website. It's looking also at some internal websites. It's giving me a very sort of distinct answer. It's like building it. Here we go. It's finding its way through now. Versus this one over here is giving you a whole set of tools that you can operate with. So
I have a quick question, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Anyways, yeah, this is fantastic. This is, to me, I have a development background, a software development background.
Yeah.
This is almost like an IDE, like integrated development environment. It almost has that like style to it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure developers are like super comfortable like engaging here. But I'm just curious, does Microsoft have any data or insights into who's actually using this stuff? Is it industrial workers on the floor? Is it leaders? Is it a mix of everyone, younger, older? I'm just sort of trying to get a sense for who are the early adopters like for this type of tool?
3 categories. I'd say the people who are sitting, sorry, hit the wrong one here. The people that are using these, like this researcher, which hopefully I'll be able to have time to show you today, building their own agent like I did here with the BOM intelligence one or so on, actually just for everybody. And so because a lot of these are like very easy to describe. Like I made one here that said, just tell me about all the people who have been recognized, have received awards in the last 14 days. Actually, if I just click this one, I wanted to know 14 days, 1 month and fiscal year, like just help me understand when people have said really nice things about my people. I want that. This product knowledge one that I made as an example, I did that because I didn't want to search through my website to try and find what's the latest on high performance computing. I built that. They're the things that are everybody. If you can kind of search the web, you can create an agent. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is more people who are in more business orchestration roles, people that work out, a lot of these are kind of people attached to ERP or MES. They understand what process is like. Then they tend to be more in this environment because they'll know what a flow looks like. So then they'll kind of kick off and be able to find their way through this environment. Process starts here. Then I'm going to add additional functions, I'm going to add a step and so on and kind of continue from there. More, I'm really deep in the business. I own a particular process. And then the third category is people that just develop. And they're the ones that are creating things especially for the organization that maybe are also public facing. And maybe these are things which go with a product, like a product companion. Some of these might be orchestrators between business for doing B2B transactions and so on.
Excellent.
What's that for? So you can see this one is already, you've got quite a bit more going on here because you can put functions and variables and if else. It's a very nice environment that I think it's very consumable for a lot of people to go here. It's like, that's easy to work with because it's very visual. But at the same time, you still have to understand like the process itself, got to understand logic steps. You're looking for a particular outcome. It's a different type of person in the organization that's doing this work compared with where I was over here, where we were building out like this BOM intelligence agent or doing something of that nature. That's a very different proposition.
I think that's a good analogy. If you can use search or Google, yeah, you can use this, right? That makes it accessible and not too intimidating for people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Let me switch now. So I was going to switch back and just run through some things here just in a PowerPoint deck. And I was just predicting that my development environment might have a few glitches. And so then I would just come through and make sure I've got a working version for you to show. And so this is what I was receiving this morning when I ran through and just made sure, just checking. This is the BOM intelligent agent. And I asked about a couple of questions. One was how many unique vendors supply this particular product. I just asked that straight out of the gate. And it went through and said, look, these are all the different things that I've found. And it also said something interesting to me as well. It said, I can't count everything that I wanted to. And it said there wasn't anything there that helped me. But down here it says, but I'll do it for you anyway. I can do that if you want it, but I'm going to do a different approach. What it tried to do for me before, it immediately started writing code because it remembered that I did this before. So I don't want to go through all of this again. I'm just going to go and write code this time and give you an answer because what you asked for, it's like not an easy answer to get out of that Excel sheet. And so you can kind of see here what it did is it did code. It took a little bit of time to do that. And then it said, okay, I found it. I worked it out. Here's what I got. Here's what it looked like. Continued down. It said, okay, what did we get to? Bottom line, found its way through. It said, some things aren't very clean, so I'm going to have to clean it for you. Look at all the work it did. It took quite a bit of effort to get to that simple answer. I told her at one point, I'm like, yeah, you can give me a clean vendor list. Give me a clean vendor list. It did that. And then it went through and said, okay, let me give you some additional insights now that it's all cleaned up and I know what's going on. So then it's giving me the counts that I was looking for. Actually, back here, interesting one, it said, oh, as you as a leader, so apparently it knows my role, you would probably want to know these three things. So it just made that up for me. It's probably you want to know that. So I'll give you the answer. And then it said, okay, actually, I worked it out for you. There was 157 of these. I cleaned up your vendor count for you, even though it was very messy in the Excel. I couldn't find it in there's 15,000 rows of the thing, but I went and found it for you. So it did like a nice job. In fact, it just keeps going here. And do you want me to do your top 50? Like it gets into it. So before I move on, what I'm going to show you is some Excel. So I'm very daring. So I'm going to try this one also live for you. So I'm going to share this one. I've never been afraid of a live demo. And so let's just find my Excel for you. I'm sharing. Okay, great. So the kind of fun thing about working in an environment like Excel is that it's something that you do really all the time. Everybody knows this, but what happens if you don't really want to build an agent just yet because you just want to work with the data and find out some things on your own? I'm going to ask it a compound question over here. Generate a table of unique vendors, total parts for each vendor, release status, relative supply chain risk, and report any interdependencies that impact risk. Compound question, go. Now, the difference here between the environment is one of them is like I showed you a building environment in there. This one is just built directly into the product itself. It's built into Excel. Immediately right out of the gate, it tells you what's going on. So I'm going to look at all the data. I've only got one sheet here. And it's telling me, okay, looking at the structure, this dedicated summary, it's like it's working its way through. Now, something that I should have done I probably should have cleaned up all of this stuff at the top here. I probably should have gone through and just deleted all of this stuff as a superfluous data. It might have helped it maybe find its way through, so it's not trying to interpret all of this, but I just said, this is real life. I'm just going to go throw it at it and just see what it can do. Like, why not? That's part of the fun here, is that you should experiment and see where it goes. What do you need to do with the data to get it to where you want? Or can it just take what it's already got here and just run with it? Oh, so it says here, first creation attempt, it didn't like it. It's going to recreate it. That's really interesting too, is it tried a method and didn't get to where it wanted to be. And so therefore it retried it, which I think is interesting. And then here, it looks like it's come up with an interesting set of answers for me. It's gone and created this sheet. Let's see if I can get this to go this way for us. It went through and it created a vendor risk summary. And it looks like it went and created some different sorts of filters for me, etc. It did a pretty good job of that. I don't mind it. Now let's try something else. So it says, okay, I did all of that for you. What else do you want? So I'll say, okay, you're done. This time around, I'm going to create a table of parts by item, include the totals, but I want to put it on a separate sheet. So I don't want it on my vendor risk analysis. I don't want it here. I don't particularly want to mess around with this guy. Instead, I'd like it to be on its own sheet. So it says, all right, I'm just going to go through and just have a look again at what you're looking for. I'm going to do a bit of summarization in order to get there. You'll notice I did call out something that it knows in here. This time around, I didn't. I just said, just talking, I want this. But now I actually called out this item type. But I told it do some totals and then also put it on a different sheet for me. I can see it's building it over here, by the way. It's like it's appeared. And sometimes when we open this, we can see it appear in real time. So it looks like it's still working. It did a very good job quickly, actually. You can see here it did everything that we're looking for, item type. It counted everything. It worked out if it was unique, how many of them are distinct parts, percentage that are unique. It's built this chart. It looks like it's still working on it. It's processing its way through. Now, one of the reasons why I want to show you that is this would take hours to go and build. Because for one, you would need to know how this data is structured, for one. And you can see there's a huge amount of it. There's 15,000 rows of this thing. It's huge. It's created this very interesting looking summary for me. It's kind of put risk analysis in there and so on. It's done a nice job of that. And at the moment, it's working on building out the next thing for me, which was this task in here, go create a table of parts. And I respected what I wanted. It went and put it on a different sheet for me. So it's working its way through there. While it's processing, I'm going to show you something else. So let's go back to where we were here. And I'll show you some things here. All right. So I'll skip through here. This time around, I'm going to show you what it's like when you bring it all together. And so I did a different approach here. This one, I said I'm going to use Cowork. This one takes a little bit of time to go and process. So you saw it was crunching there on Excel. We don't want to take up too much time. I did the same thing here this morning. I just went through and said, how about we just take that bill of materials again? And I asked it a very specific question. Can you please analyze the Excel? I want insights such vendor profile, vendor risk, part risk and dependencies. And then I want to create an overview in PowerPoint. So I'm asking it to do work on my behalf now. And it immediately came through and said, okay, I'm going to start doing this on my own. Now, the interesting thing at the top here, it's got auto turned on. What that meant is that I'm allowing my tool Cowork to try all the different AI models that are available to it and then work out which one gives me the best answer. This answers that question that people often have, which is, should I choose Claude or ChatGPT, or what should I do? I got to try them all, test them all. That sounds like a lot of hard work when we've done all the hard work for you. In fact, we just let you use all of the ones, and then one of them was going to come up with a better answer than the other. You don't even need to know what it is. It's like it doesn't matter so much, really, especially if you're in a business role. Do you really care what model it is? You only care about the outcome. some models are better at some things than others. And so here is a good way to get through all of that and just get down to an answer, which is what we want. So I did that, and then it said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. So it's telling me what I'm going to do. I'm going to load your Excel. I'm going to write some Python to go through it. So it took a coding approach. I started looking at the structure. It began telling me all this information about what it did and how it did it. It said, oh, I'm compiling your metrics for you like you asked. Somewhere along the way, it may say, oh, I'm not getting the output that I want. Let me try again. That's like you quite commonly will see that. It actually will be testing. That might trigger, I'll change the model. This model didn't produce what I wanted. I'm going to keep going. And it says, okay, I've got everything done. Now I'll go generate some Q&A and I'm going to save the deck. It went and created a deck for me. And we'll go check it out. So it said, here it is, it's available to you, which is great. And then it went and told me a few things about it. But I wasn't super happy with it. I wanted more. So I said, can you please just research each individual vendor? I want a profile for each of them, different type of profile now. I'm asking report on company performance and provide a risk analysis. So it says, okay, I got it. I'm looking at 153 vendors, so it counted them for me. Remember before it took some time to work that out, but it did it. It went through the spreadsheet and worked out there's 153 of them. And then it said, actually, it came along and it said, all right, like I can do some things here for you. Do you want me to add this to the PowerPoint? I'm like, yeah, please go ahead and add that to the PowerPoint. It started thinking about it. It's like moving on. It's working its way through the tasks. It's giving me some answers as I go. And then bingo, it generates the deck for me. And now this is a really fun thing to do actually is co-work because it really nails it for me on how productive AI can be in any business. It will take on these tasks that if you're doing yourself is late night work. It's going to take days, dependencies on other people to get to where you want to be. You've done it all in one. It orchestrated all of these things for you. And it did this, it found a template and said, I'll use this one, but you can tell it a template. I want you to use like my company template. Don't create one, but I said, just go ahead and find one and just let it work. It looks nice. And look what it's telling me. I've got like some concentration here. Top 10 manufacturers supply 63% of all vendor links. It's pretty interesting. Single source exposure. I've got like a high amount of those, 865 parts. My display and hinge are pivotal, apparently, which is interesting. And life cycle overall is pretty healthy from what it can tell based on the data. Whoops, a bit too fast there. Created a nice visualization, said, look, you've got a lot of commodity parts in here. It's all those resistors and capacitors, no doubt. Some strategic and so on. Vendor profiles. This is what I asked for. It came through and told me. We have Pegatron over here. It's an ODM in final assembly. It's a top level integrator and package owner. That's really great. And over here, it's giving me my risk analysis that I was looking for. And actually, before Cowork went through and told me why, it told me why it came up with that risk analysis too. It actually told me its logic that it created for it. But I could have given it my logic too. I could have said, I assess risk this way. I want you to do it that way too. But otherwise, it said risk normally looks like this for supply chain leaders because you told me that's what this is about. And so it came up with its best judgment. Yeah, really nice deck that it created all on its own. I could take this now to my sourcing manager. I could take it to any of my engineering people. I've got something here that's giving them a lot of information that's packaged, take it directly to a presentation. Do that tomorrow. You can see here, it's like, it's actually quite verbose. It's really going through. But this, I think, is really fun. At the end of the day, it says, here's what I would do. Here's recommended actions based on what I can see. Because it understood the context too. And so it went through and said, look, I think you need to work out second source on your display and hinge because before that's critical. But some of the other things in here is not particularly mature or you've got obsolescence backlog. You've got to take care of that. And then, of course, I did ask it to add to the deck. It's put a section to the deck. And so let's take a look. And it's, yeah, Pegatron is a moderate LG. It's a bit elevated. It's been quite black and white. We took the human out of the loop and just let it work out its own judgment. I don't have any opinions in here. I don't have people that love pen engineering saying that they're doing a great job. it's worked out objectively that Penn Engineering is doing a great job, which is another great thing about this tool. It's not influenced by people, it's just looking at the data. And then we conclude. I've got some more I want to just breeze through and then we'll wrap up because I know we're really close on time. What happens when you use Researcher? So going back before, you remember I had a bunch of agents which were there. And among those agents, one of them there was called Researcher. I used Researcher, same data, and looked for more business level information. So here it is. At the top, I said Researcher. I just went and cut and paste out of the results it gave me. So I said, I research these vendors for me. So it looks like I've got, say, Texas Instruments, everybody understands. That one's the easy one to understand, or like a Kyocera, we all know those. Let's have a look at the vendor profiles and see what happens here. First of all, apparently I was a little vague. So the researcher came back and said, okay, how do you want me to focus? And I was like, first of all, just make it short. I don't want to be here for hours reading your analysis, but I just want you to include supply chain risk and compliance. I didn't ask for it before, so I want to include that. So I gave it a little bit of instructions. And then it started building. So it reasoned through the data and in 59 steps, sorry, and then it came up with the results. So it created this for me and said, now, what do you want to do with it? And before that, I was like, can you just compare? I compared some mitigation strategies across the vendors. It was good, but it wasn't that great of a report because I didn't ask it enough. So I'm just going to augment it. And it's okay, I get you. I get you where you want to go. Let's add a little bit more. This time 65 steps in order to get there. And then it's please convert, or I said, please convert. And it made it available for me. And then bingo, it looked like this. And if we kind of skip to the bottom of this, it says to you, here's what you really need to know. So TI and Kyocera, I think we mentioned them before, they set the benchmark. That's like very interesting data off what it's found. I can see here it was looking at things like ethics and remediation mechanisms. Honestly, it would take someone a huge amount of time to go through and get this data. Even if you are a 30-year expert and you know these things intrinsically, this answers the question of how can I trust you for people that don't know you? You've got all of these sources which are directly linked in this document. So if someone doesn't trust you or they don't trust the AI, it reveals everything, how it did it, what data it went to, the answers that it gave you, and it gives the kind of the credibility behind it that you can trust it. And the wonderful thing here too, I like, is you can converse with it like a person. Like I asked the intern to go create something for me and he or she didn't quite do it the way that I wanted. I would just have a conversation like, oh, I was looking for this. Exactly the same thing here. I just kept asking for more things and it kept refining. And it respected what I wanted too. It made 3 pages. It said I could do 1 to 5 or it could do 5 plus. And I just said, no, keep it brief. And so it did that for me. I've seen this work sometimes for an hour in the background. I just work on something else. I come back and it's complete and it had charts and all sorts of things are available. You choose how deep you want it to go. But something I said there may be intriguing for you. I let it work in the background. I didn't sit there waiting for it. I did this morning. I was waiting for it because I was testing. But for normal business context, when you have your environment, you would set this up and you would let it run and you would move on to another task. Earlier, we were talking about what's happening in US manufacturing, and that's one of the big things that we see happening is people being able to take on more work because these tools can do it for you while you do something else. And the idea there is what's the best value added task you could work on? Go do a bunch of research or go make a strategic decision on which of these suppliers you want in your supply chain. That's human intelligence that you want. It did this for you. You focused on what it cannot do, which is making that critical decisioning. That's for you and to go work out with the rest of your team. That's why these tools, I think, are going to be more and more prevalent every month, every year as we go forward. A couple of quick takeaways for you. One thing is if you have a lot of information just sitting out there, here is one way that you can just get new value from it. I chose a very big overweight bill of materials. you could do exactly the same thing. You could have 5 of them there if you wanted to. It's going to find value in that information for you that maybe is lost today. You can get up and running with your agent really quick. I think it's under 10 minutes. Today I cut short a little bit because it takes a bit of processing time when you upload that Excel and so on. And so very quickly, when you're in your own environment, you can be there. And then the other thing that's interesting about it is that it will learn from you and you can refine these things as you go. You try it one time and you're like, oh, I needed to do more. They're actually made for that. Continuous improvement, they're made for that. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what you would want to do is connect it to your live environment. You probably wouldn't just remain in Excel forever. You'd be connecting it up so that it's fully automated. Kirk, thank you very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much to Rich also for helping me prepare for today. So thank you again. I hope that was insightful, and I know I did a whirlwind tour there for everybody.